Hey everyone, welcome back to 4-Star Strengths Coaching Series. Today is going to be our first episode where we have a guest. Today I'm bringing on Vance Newgard. Vance is going to hop on here real quick and introduce a little bit of himself. This is our first time kind of doing a guest. So also with this OBS system, again, you guys already know from watching videos, I'm pretty informal. I'm a total fucking noob when it comes to using the software. So no crazy transitions still, but I got a guest now. So that's fun. Camera's inverted. So you're actually over here, Vance. I pointed the wrong way. But Vance is a pretty well-known coach in the Olympic weightlifting space. I'm going to let him talk about himself, his background a little bit. He can give the elevator speech. And today we're going to be talking specifically about liftoffs. All right. Vance and I kind of discussed what topics we'd want to talk about and came up with the liftoff just because we see a lot of athletes, beginner and advanced, and also coaches do it wrong or incorrectly discuss it, or even, and I know I'm guilty of this myself, is you kind of oversee it sometimes. You're watching so many other things, and that is sometimes the thing that actually makes a lot of other problems go wrong. So we're just going to watch some lifters today, discuss a few key components, and hopefully you guys will get something out of it. Vance, why don't you tell us about yourself?
Yeah, I'm Vance Newgard. I am currently the Olympic weightlifting coach at Bruden Parker College. I am also a full-time faculty professor and coordinator of the Sport and Exercise Science program, previously at Northern Michigan University for 12 years. And now I'm in the warmer part of the climate.
He left good old Michigan. So Vance was also an athlete too. I think he's being humble right now.
Yeah, I was a bum of the elite in weightlifting. So I was maybe ranked in top 20 sometimes, and depending on what weight class I was in, and never good enough to be good, but not bad enough where nobody knew who I was.
Vance is also pretty fucking jacked. So he's well known now for being pretty fucking jacked. He's also tall. So he's pretty noticeable in a crowd. He's coached a number of notable athletes. Many athletes out there know him or have gotten the time to work with him. I know myself, he's always very easy to talk to as a coach, especially as a beginner coach. I've always felt comfortable going to him, asking questions. And over the years, built a pretty good relationship with the guy. He's always been very open to helping me if I had any questions. And also one of the very few coaches that if I needed to, in the college realm, send my athletes because they were going to be a collegiate athlete. He's definitely one of the first coaches I would recommend my athletes heading to college that wanted to continue to maybe lift in a club. I would send them to him. That's not knocking anyone. That's just, I know who he is. So we said we were going to talk about liftoffs today. And really we're talking about the phase of the setup to the knee positioning as the liftoff phase. And, I know for myself, this was one of those areas where as a beginner, I really, and we're talking like circa 2010, 2008, when I was in the Army learning this stuff, like I just kind of yoke things. I just grabbed the bar and went. And unfortunately, like we still hear that in gyms, right? In your Globo gyms, your CrossFit gyms, stuff like that. You hear like grab the bar and rip it off the floor. That's kind of like the high school coach stereotype. Why do you think, Vance, before we go into the meat and potatoes on this, like why is this phase just so like goomba ogred in coaching? Like people just say grab and rip, grip and rip, and people just don't understand the importance of it.
Yeah, well, first of all, I always try to think of it like the pull to, I call it snatch pull to the knee or clean pull to the knee versus lift off. But really it's just to set up the rest of the movement, because your highest amount of acceleration, your highest amount of force application is going to go from the knee to full extension. And in fact, depending on your athlete's abilities to produce force and how long they can produce force, and this is very individual dependent, the average weightlifter cannot continue to accelerate if they've accelerated as hard as they could right off the floor. So sometimes you can be taking something off the peak power, the final phase of the movement, if you accelerate too quickly off the floor, Also, a lot of weightlifters are not naturally born weightlifters. They do have other sports. They might do strength training, deadlifts, and things where maybe the goal is to accelerate the bar off the floor as fast as possible. And this might actually affect their positioning as well because they've developed motor patterns that are different than the motor patterns you would want in the actual snatch or clean and jerk.
Yeah, I know one thing, and to step back to your original analogy there, one of the analogies I like with my beginners or my kids is I'll actually sit there and I'll say it's because we're talking about that coming off the floor too fast and having to pick up speed is the explanation of it's like running and we're sprinting and then in the middle of the sprint I tell you okay go and it's like time to go faster. It's like well you're already going as fast as you cannot accelerate. And
Mm-hmm.
I think getting your athletes to understand the timing and when to accelerate is a really key component to teaching the lifts because then they get that nice pop, they get the acceleration, time to get under the bar and stuff like that. And I think it's just kind of forgotten about. We're so focused, I think, as coaches also, especially in our beginning years, of get under the bar, get the lockout that we just neglect that beginning phase.
Yeah, and I would add that when you're a beginner, your accuracy is going to be low. Um, so you need to really you basically have to have control over yourself, and the coach has to have control over the athlete to make them understand that as you become more accurate, you can, in fact, produce more force off the initial first phase of the pull. But the experts that you're watching on YouTube or whatever that do accelerate the bar quickly from the floor, they probably didn't learn it that way to begin with. They probably learned to pull it under control a little bit slower. And as their accuracy improved, then they could pull harder as well.
Yeah, I think that's we encounter that in our gym all the time. Is like I always compare it to like the scene in Forgetting Sarah Marshall. Have you seen that movie where Paul Rudd's like working with the character on the surfboard and he keeps getting up and off it? He's like, no, that's wrong. Do it again. No, that's wrong. Do it again. And then at the end, he's like, oh, fuck it, let's go surf. And it's like you're trying to get your athletes to like go at the right tempo, and it's like, all right, be controlled, be controlled. And then it's like they're working on it. It's like, well, 6 weeks later, you're like, no, you're going too slow now. I want you to go faster. They're like, well, you were telling me to go controlled. And they get really frustrated, and you have to kind of step back and explain to them. It's like, now you are doing it right. So now we can put a little speed on it. And, it's that little bit of panache we have to do to accelerate because speed builds speed and getting them to understand that. And like you said, really high level athletes can move an empty bar very quickly, and your beginners and even your medium level athletes they don't understand that control with speed, and they always do that idiom of I do it better when there's weight on it. Well,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you have resistance. That doesn't mean you're under control and you're actually accelerating and contracting your muscles and pushing in the ground how you should be. You're just applying more force. It doesn't actually mean you're under control more. And
Mm-hmm.
that's one thing I always try to get people to understand. Um,
Definitely.
so what I kind of wanted to do today is for you guys, what we're going to do is we're going to watch some videos. We're going to watch some videos Vance sent talking about some things out there that are taught that may necessarily not be taught well. Vance is really good, as many people that know him, with biomechanics stuff. So I'm going to let him kind of go down the rabbit hole with that. If you're not good with biomechanics, just take your time with it, pause it, look up things. If you are, then you're going to love this stuff. We're also going to watch some training hall time of a cool video I found from 2015 European Juniors that I like. I like the juniors age categories because you can see who's been doing it a long time and who's just kind of strong. It's a very you know what I'm saying, it's a very interesting age group, that juniors U23. And I always grab Europeans because they just tend to be more skilled at that age group than your North American, South American. Unpopular hot take. But the so we're gonna watch some of that. We've got some other lifters that you guys can watch, and we'll just kind of shoot the shit, talk about what we like, what we don't like. Again, nothing on here is a bash on anyone. Thanks to All Things Gym, all the other groups, or any video we grab. Thank you to you guys for letting us have this cool content on here. Um, so with that said, we're gonna kind of bump over to here. Uh, this video, we're just going to watch some highlight reel of the European juniors real quick. We can go back, rewind all that stuff. There's some cool videos that I like. This guy right here, I really like his lifts. Once we get to one of them, you got some Spanish athletes in here. I like Team Spain. I'm a big fan, obviously.
Mhm.
Matthias is a very interesting coach if you've ever had the time to meet him. Where is that snatch? So so this is a good snatch video. So we'll watch this one and then kind of break it down. So this is a good video, I think, and I wanted to kind of bring up because the speed pickup on this video I really liked. You can see it really easily. And I think beginners can see that speed of the bar just picks up really easily past the knee. We'll kind of watch that.
Yeah, and he's kind of an example of one way you can pull the bar off the start, where he starts with his hips a little bit lower than when he actually breaks the bar off the ground. He lifts his hips up. I typically don't teach beginners to do that because I think it's going to lead to them raising their hips too quickly, really hurt their accuracy. I'd rather put them in the position right before they break the bar from the floor to the start. But I don't know if he learned it that way from the start or if he changed it over time. But he's kind of an example of where he gets a stretch reflex first, and then he kind of lifts the hips into position. You can see his basically his shoulders drop a little bit, so he gets further over the bar before he starts the actual pull off the floor.
Yep. And while we're talking about that, let's talk about positioning in like that liftoff phase. So overall, when you guys are doing that liftoff or the snatch pull to knee on either the clean or the snatch, there's a few key components we're looking for as coaches. We're looking for a flat, even feet. A lot of times athletes, especially beginners, what do you see, Vance? We see that rock back to the heel, like a really hard rock back to the heel. We lose a midfoot, a nice flat foot. You can see down here, he's nice and glued to the ground. All right, we're also looking for the knees back. All right. Vance knows Coach Bob, one of my old coaches. Coach Bob Morris is known in the sport for knees back, knees back, knees back. Most people think that's all he ever said at the OTC the whole time he was there. But you can see on this athlete, he's getting his knees back so the bar can scoop back. I found a pretty cool video talking about bar trajectory that I'm going to play that somebody did on YouTube. I don't know who they are, but it kind of gives some lines and shows the S curve, as we call it. And then, like Vance was saying, we see shoulders staying or getting over the bar more to keep that midline balance. His base is staying balanced, and he's got a nice flat back. Anything you want to add to this, Vance?
Yeah, starting with the feet, I usually tell people to get their balance over their ankle at the start.
I like that.
You hear heels a lot, and I understand why coaches say that. They want to keep the athlete from being on their toes, which is a more natural thing for any type of athlete, especially if you've done other sports, you're always on your toes. But actually, having all the balance on the heels is incorrect because then you get into a position where you actually can't extend the knees and actually jump and finish the movement. So what happens is then you have to forcefully shift all of your weight forward, which ends up pushing the athlete onto the toes. So at the start, I usually tell people, as long as your balance stays over the ankle and you push, the knees will get back. As Coach Bob would say, get your knees back. So I typically don't tell people to push their knees back. I just tell them to get their balance on the ankles and then push hard through their feet.
I like
and
that. It's like a
naturally,
passive.
Yeah.
I like that.
So
that's why I do this stuff. That's why you find people smarter than you to work with. Real quick, because it looks like we have a little bit of on here. This is a question I always get, and not to go off on a tangent, but how do you feel about splaying of the knees?
The knees out. It's not something I initially teach. I don't like just put all my athletes down in the starting position and tell them to push their knees out.
Yeah.
But if I notice that they're having difficulty getting their knees out of the way, I might suggest that, and sometimes that fixes the problem. So when you push your knees out, obviously, if you start with your knees with your toes turned out and you push your knees out a little bit to track with the angle of the toes, then your knees do naturally get out of the way. Also, some lifters, especially if you have a long torso, might actually almost be required to lift that way.
Yeah.
To be in the correct position and to be able to get their chest up without putting excessive stress on their lower back and whatnot. So it could be just kind of a natural body type of this lifter. It's hard to tell if he's got a long torso, but with a still picture like this or not a close-up, but it looks like he might, I think just in general, he has kind of shorter legs and a longer torso in general. So that's a very common type position. I call that kind of the pyramid position, because you kind of make, with your body, you kind of make this pyramid shape versus somebody who has longer femurs and kind of a shorter torso would be more obtuse, right?
Yeah. So we'll kind of watch a couple more videos. Here's one more lift, I think, from that lifter from a different angle. Yep, here we go. So again, Vance was talking about this lower setup, so you guys can see what he was discussing.
Yeah, and then he raises his hips before he initiates the pull.
So we'll watch that real quick in slower motion. You guys can see this hip is going to fire up a little bit early. So that's, again, something I also would not teach right away. I think that's more of going to throw some kinks in the athlete's
Yeah, and you can even see when he raises his hips, he does actually create some slack in the arms, which he straightens out later, like when he starts the initial pull. But if you have an unskilled athlete and they create that slack in their arms, it may force them to actually basically start pulling with the arms or keeping the arms bent too much in the initial pull. So
watch some more. So this athlete I was watching, I really liked his pull and just the display of like the tension he has off the floor. I got to be tricky with how he comes off the floor. But he's locked off that floor, and I really liked it. And then you can see his speed.
He's starting with completely a static.
Yeah, very good static setup. You can see lots of muscle right into that liftoff. I think that's David from Team Spain, if I remember right. Yeah, this is Team Spain, guys. Matthias is a very traditional coach over at Team Spain. You're going to see a lot of that. But this lift in general, let's slow down this bad boy because I like it. So this is generally how I will coach a snatch pull lift off or a lift off to the knee, guys. And this is what we're talking about. The setup here is going to be more traditional. The hip is in a good position, nice, lots of tension, athletes loaded, lots of tension with the bar. And then from here, you're going to see just a gigantic, what we call kind of breaking the ground. He's going to push from the ground right away. Boom. And then you see that nice acceleration through and through.
Yeah, and you can see his chest, his torso pretty much stays exactly the same as he pulls.
Yep.
So there's no dropping of the shoulders and the raising of the butt. They come up equally. And one little cue that, especially if you're just learning or you haven't gotten to the phase where you start tweaking people's first pull, is one way to figure out if the hips are in a good starting position to begin with would be line up the elbows. You can see he's got his elbows lined up with his kneecaps. So they're not behind his knees and they're not like way in front of his knees where he's too far over the bar. And that's for most athletes, that'll be like the good starting trajectory. And then, with the nuances, you can make changes where you can lower his hips a little bit or raise his hips a little bit. But
it seems like, up?
Yeah. So you can see his elbows are pretty much right in line with the kneecaps.
Yeah.
As opposed to like if somebody's elbows are behind their kneecaps, it probably means their hips are too low at the start, and if they're like way in front of the kneecaps, then their hips are too high.
Yeah, I like what we've been doing lately with a lot of our beginners because they get to feel that tension. Is we get them to because we teach the top-down method. Is we go from like the hang at the knee position, and we will put them at the knee, and then we'll take a knee next to them to help like guide the bar so it stays close. And we'll have them lower to the ground. So they're bending the knees, lowering the hips. And then when they get to the ground, they're in this position. They feel how their hamstrings are awake. Their muscles are awake. They feel the tension. And we have them do that a couple times. and their elbows are in the right place. And then we tell them now, okay, I want you to set up in that same mimicked position. And they're like, oh,
Yeah.
it's so uncomfortable. It's like, yeah, no shit. Like, it's supposed to be a little uncomfortable. You're supposed to be tight and in tension. Because a lot of times you see people lazy setup on setups.
We back?
Yep,
I think I got cut up there.
Yeah, I got you. You're good.
All right. So you actually you have them have the bar in their hands first and lower it down?
Yeah, so we'll have like just with training plates. So when it clicks to the ground, they're in like that nice compact loaded position from the knee. And we also, because our hands are there, we're like getting them to understand like, okay, the bar stays close to you. If this doesn't come straight down. So you got to use your lats also as you do this.
Yeah, that's a good method. I've also if an athlete has a difficult time like putting their hands on the bar, bringing their hips down, and then getting into position, they might not have a good body awareness, or they might just not be strong enough yet to hold that position or comfortable with that position.
Yeah.
I put them I want first, and then have them themselves with their arms straight to the bar and start that as well.
Gotcha. I think we're getting rug pulled a little bit on your signal. We will wait a second. Hopefully not lose you. Are you there?
I'm back. I wonder if yeah, I'm here.
Okay.
I wonder if it's my Wi-Fi.
Well, I'm not on Wi-Fi, so I'm on hardline. Okay, so we got this one right here. Female athlete. She had a very aggressive setup. We're watching in slow-mo right now, so let me take it back to normal. This will be the last of the training hall videos we watch. So aggressive setup, lots of bending, tugging. Okay, not a bad pull in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean,
I personally hate these type of setups. Personally, I'm not like knocking her as an athlete. The all around tug, do the like just grab the bar. That's just my style, kind of.
Yeah,
what's your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think she pulls more aggressively from the start, and I think it probably does take a little bit off of the acceleration past the knee. But you know, in weightlifting, it really comes down to where's your peak power when you actually finish the movement.
Yeah.
That reminds me of like a 90s Bulgarian lifter, Zlatan Vanov, who would pull incredibly hard, just yank. But he held his position very well. But he would just go as fast as possible right from the start. And he set world records like that.
Yeah.
So if you have an athlete who's kind of lightning fast, Kendrick Ferris, for example, one of the most powerful weightlifters the U.S. has ever produced. So I don't think there's any lacking of power by him pulling as hard as he could from the floor. But yeah, if you're going to pull as hard as you can from the floor, it's a little bit more difficult to lower your hips into that position to do it, because I think it's going to take away from most people's accuracy. I think if you get down below where you're supposed to be, raise the hips, raise the chest, lead with the chest first, and then pull hard, you're probably going to be more accurate. So yeah, I'm not into like the 4 or 5, dynamic start shifts. Beforehand, I don't think you need all of that stretch reflex going crazy at the start.
I do like one stupid thing, and it's just a bad habit, but no, some people are a little out of control. They're taking like 4 or 5 tugs on it. So this is that video I found. I don't know who this person is. I just found it online, but I really like just kind of the lines, because I always draw on the whiteboard. I'm a big whiteboard drawer to help my newer athletes understand how the bar path should be. And they do a good job of kind of displaying like the bar path. Ignore this because I didn't even read it. I'm sure it's some college kid doing it for school, so you can read it if you want. I'm sure it's not wrong. But we're really just looking at this picture here. And this is that bar path. Athlete is facing this way. Bar path is sweeping in. Okay, so as Vance and I were talking about, we don't want to go around the knees. That's why we're talking about the knees coming back. That balance over the midfoot is going to help with that. Bar path comes in. It's going to come in at different intensities for different athletes. And then as we come up, it's going to have to also displace around the chest. So the thing I liked about it is it shows different types of athletes trajectories and talking about looping. So here we have an athlete where the bar comes nice and up, stays nice and tight. And then we have another video or another example where like he's basically hypothesizing this was a good one for what we're talking about today is the athlete travels forward in the start. And you guys watching this is a really good example of showing that it's actually it's making the lift a ton harder. You're putting the weight in front of you. So you're having to do more work. That's just pure numbers and physics. And Vance is the bigger brain than me in this video. So he's, I'm sure, going to agree. You put the weight in front of you, it's going to be more work. It's just a number game. But you can see that bar whips out in front and then you got to slosh it back into you, which is just going to make things much more harder to do. Any notes on this, Vance?
Yeah, and traditionally, not only does it screw up the bar path and the rest of the lift, but also if the bar travels forward, or even if it travels vertically and not back, an athlete generally will do something to compensate, keeping the bar close to their body past the knee, which usually includes contracting muscles that shouldn't be contracted. Like your traps shouldn't already be forcefully contracted when the bar's above your knee. Your biceps, your forearms, even your grip, you're going to be pulling as hard as you can to keep it close to you, when ideally those muscles, the back should be tight, but your arms, your traps should actually be relaxed, because you need to contract them later in the lift, and a contracted muscle can't contract again.
Exactly.
Try flexing as hard as you can and then throw a jab. It's going to be slow, but if you're relaxed, boom, it's going to be fast.
Yeah, it's the overactive trap. I'm happy that you brought the traps up. I am literally in like an all-out war against the traps in my gym right now. And the more I focus on it and catch our athletes having overactive traps on almost everything they do, the better the lifting's getting. So I just want to double down on that. And then here's another example. Too much hip thrust because they're coming up and slapping it away. So this is where we just go way too far back and we're pushing it out. So this is just a cool little video. But so this is these three videos we're gonna watch now is kind of Vance's videos he sent me. Which one do you want to watch first, sir?
The one that's up there is fine.
Okay, so you sent me this video. I'll let you kind of talk us through, guide me what you want to chat on. You want the audio on or no?
No, this is a kind of a demonstration video, and no offense to whoever produced this. Overall, it's a good starting position. It's this angle. You can see how rolled forward his shoulders are, though, at the start. So I think his hip.
Getting rug pulled again. Well, wait a second. So Vance is talking about the shoulders are internally. He's not setting back, and we don't want to like lock everything back in and just arch our back. We want to make sure that
The shoulders.
All right, Vance. So we lost you.
Oh.
Okay, so let's start back again to where you were talking about the shoulders.
Yeah, so you can kind of see in this starting position everything.
Oh no. The Wi-Fi signal is killing us in Georgia. Michigan has greater Wi-Fi signal. This is a fact that's being proven right now.
Do you want
we lost you again.
in the scapula?
We lost you again, sir. One more try.
Okay, so in the starting position, his hips look pretty good in a good position, but you can actually see that his shoulders are a little bit rounded forward, and his upper back is flat, but it's not as tight as it could be. From that position, the commentator kind of says that you should retract the shoulders, which is true, you should, but you actually should be pulling the shoulders not just back, but actually down, and lifting the chest, squeezing the upper back more so that the chest is actually a few centimeters higher, which will get those shoulders back, which will bring the bar closer to him so that he won't have to use his traps later to pull it in close. And as well. So overall, his hip position is good, but I would be behind him shoving his upper back into the position I wanted. I try to view it as actually tighten your ribs down. I know that doesn't make sense because your ribs aren't muscles, but if you depress your shoulders like this,
Yeah, I like that term,
as you're
depress.
pushing them back, you're actually activating the lats, which are much stronger, much larger and stronger muscle than the traps, and they're going to hold that bar close to the body. If you're only using your trapezius to kind of keep your shoulders back, they're not going to be strong enough to basically hold 180 kilos in that position, and it's going to slump your shoulders forward at some point during the move. He's got like 40 kilos on here, but 140 kilos is going to break his shoulders forward, right away.
Yeah, one thing I also see in a lot of coaching or even beginners is people that association with getting their back flat or straight. What they actually do is they just arch. They just arch their spine because they get the feeling of tension, and it's not the same. It's not the same at all as to what we want as coaches. So a term I've been using lately is like a bulletproof back, or like you tell people it's like, okay, if I'm going to hit you in the back, I want you to feel like defensive for me punching you in the back. Like people get that. They understand like packing those muscles to take a hit. And I found for some reason that works a lot better than sitting there and like, because again, we work with lawyers and firefighters and teachers. They don't get all the terms, the muscular terms, like depressing. Obviously, me and you, a bunch of the other people in fitness and health understand those terms. And I like that cue working with like a 14-year-old, telling them maybe a bulletproof back. They pack that much better than just arching, because then you get nothing out of it also. And then the lats tight thing is so important, guys. And one of the things that he's saying is like, you need to make sure that bar stays next to you when you go to break from the ground. Because two things usually happen that I see is you guys as athletes, you don't have lats tight. So when you break from the ground, the bar actually like almost, I call it like it pendulums forward. The bar wins. You come off the ground and just goes forward towards the front of your plane. Or you just don't have any tension on there. So when you go to jump, the bar stays down and you go up, which is even worse. And I'll actually, and Vance, I don't know, you might enjoy this because it's a little bit aggressive. I'll actually walk up to my athletes. I'll tell them to set up, and I'll kind of like kick their bar from behind. I'll like give it a small punt with my foot. And if the bar just lobs away, it's like, you're not tight at all with this thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good way to kind of check. Obviously, don't walk up to your athletes' bars and start drop kicking them across the gym. But it's a good way to check whether athletes are actually using their lats or just trapped up to it, to where they don't actually have that tension that Vance was talking about.
Yeah, and you really shouldn't like think about arching the lower back. Just kind of an anatomy lesson. If you're arching your lower back, you're basically using the tendons and ligaments in the spine to hold it, which are weak, right? Your back neutral, it's bone on bone. All your joints together. The upper back, your thoracic spine, can arch a little bit, but the lower back should actually stay neutral.
So we already kind of touched base on this, ironically. With this video, we're talking about that more dynamic start. Greg does this in his video. Greg, we're using your video. Hope you don't mind. Love you. I do have a bone to pick because you didn't come to the Arnold for your birthday. We have the same birthday weekend. But Vance is just going to kind of chat on what we were talking about earlier with that more, I guess we'll call fluid liftoff or fluid snatch pull.
Yeah, so Greg starts in the bottom here, and probably one of the reasons is because he's a little bit of a bigger guy, stockier. So he starts in a more compact, and you'll see this with heavyweights a lot too. To reach the bar, they almost have to sit, in the bottom first to actually get their hands on the bar in an effective position. But yeah, he's stretching. He's getting a stretch reflex as he squats down. And then he's using that to get into the correct position and break the bar from the floor. So, I mean, this is a demonstration video. It's very good. And you can see he's focused on lifting his chest off the start. And you can see his shoulders are over the bar where they're supposed to be. And if I was going to be critical at all, I would say he needs to actually just lift his chest a little bit more at the start. You can see once he gets past the knee is when he brings his chest up just a little bit. Again, this very, very minute thing, which, once you've been doing this for 2 decades like him, he's not going to make those incremental changes, I don't think. But that's what I would do if he was a beginner. I would focus more a little bit on getting the chest up just a little bit more. And, obviously he's not competing. He's just doing a demonstration video. So it might be, if he was a competition, he'd be a little bit more locked in on that as well.
This position, guys, I'd send this video to my athletes all the time because I really like these postures. All right. We see, again, this nice flat feet. We see these shins come back. So the bar's clearing, it's sweeping back. All right. The one thing I like is the arms are nice and packed. You don't see that shoulder. Like we were talking about that last video. This is a good example. The shoulder's pulled back, right? We don't see that forward rolled shoulder like Vance was talking about. The other thing I like that a lot of times, Vance, people forget is that Greg's eyes are clearly displayed forward. I catch my athletes all the time in the gym just fucking staring at the ground while they do this shit. And I mean, in college, at the college, I assume you see that shit all the time too, right? It's at the end of the workout, everyone's fucking tired, so they just get lazy. They're just getting them done, and
Yeah.
that postures and how your eyes are looking and stuff like that is super important. So
or they're looking up.
Yeah,
too.
they're doing this thing, trying to help with their back.
And I usually just go, "What's up there? What are we looking at?"
I just tell people God gave up on weightlifting years ago, so he's not looking. So again, good video demo. Catalyst has a lot of good videos. And then one more demo we had sent. So this video, I think I know why you sent this one.
My binoculars to see that one.
This is the one where he's jacking his shoulders back.
Yeah. So the main thing with this one, he's kind of the example where he's probably been told maybe too often or taking it too far, trying to get his knees back, where his knees actually become straight.
Yes.
Locked. So he's focused too much on, rather than allowing the knees to come back, it seems like he's forcing them back, like he's just pushing like this versus it being natural, and he ends up like actually way too far over the bar. And what's going to happen is he can't effectively perform the second part of this movement without adjusting. So his adjustment will probably be to drive the knees forward because they're too far back, and he's gonna launch this bar forward. No offense to whoever is in this video.
Yeah.
If you want to come fight me, I'll send you my address. But yeah, he's kind of the example of he's probably focused too much on trying to get his knees back out of the way versus I would have him focus more just on his balance in the feet and pushing. Or it could be the case that I tell him to push the knees out a little bit so he doesn't have to worry so much about getting the knees back.
Yeah, it's a good example, guys, where there's some good things going on. Like he does understand shoulders over the bar. He's staying nice and flat with his feet. Elbows are facing out with the bar. It's just one of those things where some of the key components get lost and you're actually going to make a lot more problems down the road. So one last thing I kind of want to show that I liked was this video that actually got up of Angie DeJomes, whereas her last 3 lifts, because we were talking about acceleration, and this was at the youth games in Japan, youth juniors, and I love when All Things Gym does the 3 lifts side by side, because you can have a pretty good chance of seeing like why lifts failed or what went on. And in this video, you can really tell where acceleration ended, and when she comes and fixes the lift. So it slows down in the next one, for those of you that have never watched. So to the left is her first attempt. Then we have second and third on the right side.
One thing I noticed in the second one, I think she straightens out the torso a little bit early. as well.
Yep. Yeah. The second one I picked up on her speed. Her speed dies off. Like if she didn't complete her pull, is what we'd say. You see this nice speed pop on this one, and we'll see her second one. You can kind of see that speed just not get all the way there, and like Vance said, she extends a little too early. Third one she makes. She, as we'd say in the most layman's terms, is she finished her pull. She got the rest of the speed, able to get under that last lift. These are really good videos if you guys want or have never seen these. And Vance, that's the one you were talking about. If you kind of want to break that down, we'll kind of make it our last lift we talk about today.
In the second one, she pushes her balance a little bit onto the toes early. You can see her torso is straightening out a little bit early. She's thinking about getting under the bar, I think, or just subconsciously trying to get under the bar a little early. So she's what can happen is you get this stress and it feels a little bit slower because you have the stress on the body. So it feels slow. So what you do is you start moving your own body faster. So typically athletes, what they do is they straighten the torso faster and they're moving themselves faster, but they're not moving the bar and themselves in one unit. So she's kind of, I would call this an impatient lift, right? So then she just kind of has to try to dive under the bar because she hasn't accelerated it enough past the knee. So then she goes, I have to get under it fast, and it's going to be forward just because she didn't pull it high enough, and then she dove under and didn't allow the bar to basically come back to her so she can pull under the bar to a better degree.
Yeah, so lots of good stuff, guys. Hopefully you got something out of that. Again, thank you to every video we used today. Stuff's on the internet, super easy. You guys as athletes and coaches can go learn a lot. I know I learn a lot and have throughout my career just by reaching out or looking at other people's videos, looking at other people's athletes, trying to figure out why things are going on, why they're not. Vance is another good example of reaching out to other coaches. Really when it comes to setups, guys, they are a really easy phrase to remember is a good start usually constitutes a good finish. All right. They are very easy to not pay attention to. And if you do start paying attention to them, you'll probably have better lifts because everything kind of flows downstream. Okay. And that's what I'll leave you with. Hopefully you guys got a bunch out of this. Thank you to Vance. Obviously, Vance, you got any leaving words for what's going on here or what we talked about today?
Yeah, just don't be in a hurry. I think that goes for your long-term progression and the actual setup and how you want to complete one single lift. Don't be in a hurry. Be patient.
Awesome. I appreciate it. Vance, we'll get this video out soon. And for all of you that watch it, please feel happy to like, comment, subscribe. If you have any questions, reach out to Vance. Vance, where can they reach out to you? Where can they annoy you?
You can email me at vnewgard@bpc.edu, or you can annoy me on the social medias, Vance_Newgard on Instagram, or I'm also on Facebook, Vance Newgard.
Awesome. Thanks, Vance, for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, cool.